Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Welcome to the I Am Salt Lake podcast. This is episode 81. My name is Chris Hollifield. Welcome to my show. Welcome to the podcast where I introduce you to locals, professionals, musicians, everyday people that I believe are making Salt Lake City just a little bit better to live in. So thank you very much for joining me, especially if this is your first time listening in. Thank you so much for listening. IamSaltLake.com is the website. You can go there and find out everything podcast related. I got all the previous episodes right there online. You could check them out, download them, listen to them as you please, maybe find out about somebody in the area that you maybe weren't quite as familiar with, but you just wanted to hear their story. Got it right there online. You could check that out. A few slight changes to the podcast. I'm changing my schedule a little bit. I'm going to be releasing episodes on Mondays and Thursdays instead of the previous schedule of Sunday and Wednesday. Just a slight schedule change. I just wanted to make that announcement so you guys can get familiar with that and check out new episodes on those days, Monday and Thursday. Just kind of helps my schedule out a little bit, and hopefully it doesn't ruin your guys' podcast listening schedule at all. I know how it is. I have my favorite episodes favorite shows that I look forward to on certain dates. And when those get screwed up, my whole week's out of whack. So hopefully the little schedule change doesn't affect you guys too much. I will be here twice a week, showcasing some new people or people that maybe you aren't familiar with, or maybe that you are familiar with. But either way, IamSaltLake.com is a website. Like I mentioned, I got the voicemail line up there. All my links for the social media sites. Connect with me. Tell me what you think of the show. Tell me what you're doing with your summer here in Salt Lake City. It's been a beautiful summer. A lot going on. A lot still going on coming up here in the next couple months of summer. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting excited for Twilight. Belle and Sebastian is coming up here, and the Flaming Lips, some really great bands. Can't believe they added Ludacris onto that bill, or onto the Twilight lineup. A lot of really good bands. So anyways, this episode, I actually went down to Fairmont Park. If you guys are familiar with that park, it is located in the Sugar House area. It's 1049 Sugar Mount Drive in Salt Lake City. And I met up with Benny Raskin. You guys might be familiar with him, BennyRaskin.com. He's also a bartender at Keys on Main. He's opened up the Woodshed. He used to do a really cool podcast back in the day called the SLC Pubcast that I was quite a fan of, and actually was a big inspiration for me to start up this podcast. And he's kind of been on that list of people I've wanted to talk to, people I've wanted to bring on the show, and I finally had that opportunity to sit down and chat with him and find out a little bit more about Benny Raskin. So I'm really excited to bring you this conversation that I had with him at Fairmont Park. We were hoping to maybe get the opportunity to sit and talk with a homeless person or a drug addict or somebody at Fairmont Park, but we really didn't. The opportunity didn't arise. But maybe next time. And who knows? You never know what's coming up on the future episode of I Am Salt Lake podcast. That's why you want to make sure you subscribe in iTunes or on Stitcher Radio. That way you don't miss a single episode. So with that being said, let's jump into that conversation that I had with Benny Raskin at Fairmont Park. Hopefully you guys enjoy it, and thank you for listening to another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
As we're here at Fairmont Park, probably the most interesting grungy park in the Salt Lake City Valley. We have the skaters in the background doing rail slides, clicking amongst the wind. Soccer players are setting up for another impromptu game. Traffic on 900 East is stalled because of the trolley that's going along Sugarmont Drive. Local hooligans are eyeballing all of Chris's equipment, and they're sharpening knives and shillelaghs to come over and rob us. The gays are cruising over by Fairmont Lake. You know about that, right?
I don't.
This is one of the. Are we live?
We're recording.
That's cool. So the story that I learned about Fairmont Park, there's a couple of really cool things about cool is not the right word to start this thing off with. Right there, you see where that outhouse is?
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, a buddy of mine works for the Tribune named Aaron Falk. He got called in because he was working the crime beat, and he drew short straw to come cover a story where there was a horrific murder in this park. And so 2 years ago, some transient guy got his hands on this mentally disabled woman, and he basically he killed her and then disemboweled her right in that first stall right over there.
Which we're not too far from right now.
We're 45 feet away.
Yeah, 45 feet, yeah.
And then 6 months ago over there by Fairmont Lake, which is about it's Fire Station 13, so I'm kind of pointing towards the northeastern part of the park, which is close to where the Sugar House 24-hour fitness is. Over there, some guy was found dead in the middle of the lake, died of drowning, and two of his buddies were there trying to pull him out. Middle of the winter. And they said it took the fire department almost 45 minutes to get there to rescue these people, to kind of get involved with it. Crazy thing about it is the fire department is literally 30 feet away. It's closer than we are to that rest station.
Yeah.
And so why did it take almost 3/4 of an hour to get there? And so
you know a lot about this park.
Well, I come here every single day.
Yeah.
It's I've got two dogs. I got a chocolate lab named Shelly and a black lab named Roxy. Older dogs. My girlfriend and I picked up a couple of years ago. We take them out to the park where there's a big soccer field here, and Roxy shags balls while me and Shelly just walk the entire property. And I found everything from a camcorder. That was the greatest thing going home. You ever had a panic moment before? I had the camcorder, charged it up, and there was one video on it. And I'm sitting there going like, man, I watch enough horror films. Like what could be on this video recorder? So I'm sitting there like kind of panicking. I turn it on and it starts off with a picture on some sort of carpet. It flashes up to this kind of scantily clad girl. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a porno on here. Like they stole this camcorder, filmed the porno or this, that, and the other. And then it picks up and the girl kind of runs out of the room. And then a mother comes in and she's literally a hand to God on this one. She's carrying a rolling pin, which is one of the more antiquated statements you'd ever have. My mother is holding a rolling pin, and so then the video cuts out. But I still have this camcorder that I found in this park. You find syringes. I find Coke bags. There's empty plastic bottles everywhere from pop-off vodka to cheap Sailor Jerry rum and stuff like that. But what's cool about Fairmont? It's the most distinct, unique park probably in Salt Lake proper. If you go to Glendale, I bet you there's some parks similar to this, but ethnically it's very diverse. The skate park brings in kids of all ages, all kind of demographics and stuff like that, which is a really cool thing about it. And then on the weekends, you're going to have because I just live down the street, you're going to see the African immigrants, the Hispanic community come out here. Like on Saturday, this place is absolutely packed to the gills. They've got the taco trucks pulled up there. You're going to see 7-8 different teams warming up to kind of do round robin tournaments that they do every single weekend. You're going to see guys, drunk, passed out underneath trees. Right over your shoulder over there, those kids are smoking pot.
We should go hit them up first, all right? Before we get too far into this.
Yeah, well, when we take a commercial break, we'll go ask. But I mean, the reality is this is a really unique, diverse park. And I think what I love most about why I always give these Fairmont Park updates on Twitter is that.
Well, that's what you're well known for that.
Yeah. It's one of my gimmicks that I do. Half of them are full of shit. The other half are kind of like legitimate observations, is that I love living in Salt Lake when I have very un-Salt Lake moments. And Fairmont Park never disappoints. It never, ever disappoints. I've never come to this park and not found some sort of discarded piece of trash, clothing. You'll find like a full baby diaper in the middle of the soccer field. So even if they were just changing their baby, why were they not
in the middle of the soccer field?
At least hide behind a tree if you're going to change a baby.
Yeah.
So anyway, I come to Fairmont, like I said, probably every single day at the pups. And, it's
what kind of dogs were they again?
They're both labs.
Both labs, okay.
Yeah, chocolate and a black.
Yeah.
And older girls. And so they're good for about a 30-minute walk. And if you walk the trails, because they have all cut around here and stuff like that, you're going to come across really crazy things. I mean, these two fellas over there, they're shithouse drunk. And the reason why is that we've got a liquor store that's right on the other side of the park. I don't think there's another liquor store in such proximity to a large park in the entire city. I could probably go through all the liquor stores, but none of them are as close to this park. You don't see a place that sells malt liquor right next to Liberty Park.
Yeah.
Obviously with the drum circles, they have to pack all that in themselves. But here it's just like proximity. It's in the middle of like Sugar House.
Well, and you don't see a lot of police here really either.
That to me is one of the problems with the place. What I like, and I'm going to give a lot of credit to the kids over at the skate park, is there's a lot of self-policing over there. And that the older guys, and we're not talking like 30, 40-year-old guys, we're talking like 16, 18-year-old guys, you'll see them kind of harp down on the younger kids. Things like graffiti and smoking and stuff like that is, kind of look the other way. You can tell they don't give too much of a shit about that. But you will see with the drinking, they'll tell them to get out of here. Like, you want to smoke pot? Like, look what they're doing. I mean, we're watching them right now dispersing, and they're going to go back to the skate park. Like, there's rules to the park. And I think maybe law enforcement, maybe they should police the area better because, someone ended up got drowned and another person got dismembered. How many people do we know he's even been dismembered or been around a dismemberment story?
I'd probably freak out if I saw that, But, yeah. But there is something to be said about governing yourself, though, and policing your own community and keeping the law enforcement out. There's something to be said about that, and kind of a little bit of pride there, I think, though, to a degree, don't you think?
I think it's part of a great Western tradition.
Yeah.
We're taught as Westerners to be self-sufficient. We're taught to protect ourselves, protect our family, protect our community. And I think what's nice about this particular park is that, the houses that line the park itself, they do a very good job of policing the people around there. Butted up against I-80, we don't have the issues to that, to the south side. But I really believe that people here have like live and let live sort of attitude. And as long as your shit doesn't interfere with my Venn diagram of shit, then we're going to be cool. And providing you pick up your dog poop while I'm walking my dogs, I don't have a problem with you. That's the only time I've ever really gotten into trouble here is I've been yelling at people to pick up their
dog shit.
They should.
Let's back up a little bit. And I want you to introduce kind of yourself for people listening. Who is Benny Raskin? What are you doing in Utah? I mean, I know you're not from Utah. Share a little bit about your story.
Okay.
Who's Benny?
All right. Well, I was born in. I say this a lot, but I was born in El Cajon, raised in Las Vegas, educated in Reno, and I live in Salt Lake. Was born in San Diego. I was 1974. I'm 39 years old. My folks moved us to Las Vegas after my dad's career in the Army when I was about 7 or 8 years old and stuff like that. So I went through 4 through K in Vegas. Having a Vegas upbringing kind of is, I talk about this a lot with friends and stuff like that, is that Vegas in the mid 80s to early 90s was kind of a boring place to grow up.
I could imagine.
And, it's just amazing. Like these cell phones that we have in our pockets have more technology that was probably in our house. And therefore our cell phones had more opportunities for entertainment. So it was a lot of, reading comics, sneaking off to the movies, going there for 2-3 hours, to go see 2-3 movies because the air conditioning in the theater was better than the one we had in our house. I went to a high school that had a graduating class of almost 1,700 students. And so Bonanza High in 1992, that graduating class was the last year before they opened up 5 other high schools. So when I went to college in 92, it was like a breath of fresh air, not because of the freedom of being away from my family and kind of starting a new chapter, but really just not having so many people around me all the time. And so went to college up at UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, worked at the student newspaper, wrote a human interest column, and studied political science and played rugby. When I graduated college in 96, I moved back to Las Vegas, and instead of pursuing a job, I continued to pursue playing rugby. I was with a team called the Las Vegas Blackjacks that we had a lot of success. And how I ended up in Salt Lake City was a fellow named Steve. It's funny, we're talking about things we weren't going to talk about before we got rolling on this. This dude's last name is one of those few things I won't say because he ended up going, he's in jail and a bunch of other stuff. But this fellow Steve, he ended up making a grip of money on the internet stock bubble in 99. And he was from Salt Lake, so he wanted to move back up here, and he needed a handyman, a valet, a chauffeur, a gopher guy. And so I ended up working for that guy for about 18 months before we had a falling out. And during that time, I was kind of waiting tables in the gastronomy gastronomy restaurants here in Salt Lake. So when I had the falling out with Steve, I basically, for the first time ever, I was on my own because, growing up in Vegas, I had my parents take care of me. While I was in college, I had dorms, student loans, everything, you had like a lot more control in my life. Moving back to Las Vegas, there was a rugby, which is much more of a fraternity than you could kind of imagine. And here I was kind of penniless, destitute
in Salt Lake.
Yeah. I went from living in just a fantastic house up on the foothills in a huge home, with access to an Infiniti Q45, and he would pay for trips and stuff like that. I mean, it was really like I was his body guy. I would travel with him and help him out do things. So I went from being kind of high on the mountain, like literally being up on the foothills, to kind of living in the valley without 2 pennies in my pocket. So I kind of threw myself into waiting tables and bartending initially just as a way to survive, because I didn't even have the money to go back to Vegas if I wanted to. And then things just started clicking with me, because when I first moved to Salt Lake, I absolutely, positively fucking hated it here. I didn't understand why we had Cartesian coordinates for streets. Like, what do you mean you live on 900 East, 836 South? Like, that makes no sense, man. Because back home in Vegas, it's like, oh, I live on 1835 Lindell Street, and like, if you were to ask me, like, where's Lindell? It's like, well, it's between Oakey and Jones. And like, okay, where's Oakey and Jones,
Well, now you throw a street name in the mix here, and it's like, you don't even know how to get there,
Or the other thing about it is that once you learn the 6 crucial ones, like Foothill,
true. South Temple,
West Temple, Main State, Foothill,
yeah.
and Highland. You're kind of in business, But if I were to say, oh, I live off Oakley Street, I would be like, you got to be out of your fucking mind. Like, a little more information here, pal. I didn't like that part about it. I was initially resistant to the liquor laws. Growing up in Vegas, a lot of people don't talk about this a lot, but it's a very strong, large Mormon community, And so I went to a high school that was, dubbed Mormon High. I was thrown in the minority with the black and Filipino and the Indian kids and the Mexican kids because I wasn't going to an LDS stake in the morning or going to seminary. And so having, always been around the LDS people, I kind of figured that out, but I figured when I moved to Salt Lake, it would be a little more difficult, which it turns out it wasn't at all. I mean, it's a complete misconception, but there was this, like I said, it was like in 2000-ish that I kind of had this epiphany. It's like, all right, look, here's your deal. You save up some money, cut bait, get the hell out of town, or are you going to stay here? And I think what actually clicked for me is that I started meeting some friends. And the friends that you meet in high school and college are a little bit different because proximity really draws you together. Like you're in the same classes, you eat lunch together. It's a little easier to make partnerships, friends, date, and stuff like that. Moving to a new town, it's not really the case. Like, you kind of got to get in with some folks. And
did you find the people in Salt Lake to be friendly?
Oh, geez, to the point of nausea, actually. And to this day, I still find that.
Yeah.
Growing up back in Nevada, it's like my dad was fairly explicit. Like, you don't talk to strangers. I remember just the first couple of days being in town, crossing the street up by Temple Square, because, checking out your environment. And as I'm walking across the street, a guy, about my age, 24, 25 at the time, looks over at me and says, like, how you doing? And my first reaction is like, what do you want?
You're going to rob me?
What's the deal, man? What's going down? And reality is he was just saying hello, and people in stores are friendly. It's there's a Utah niceness that it's off-putting because I honestly think it's kind of genuine. It's one of the few genuine things about the state is that people for the most part are relatively polite. I mean, even hardcore guys here in town are pretty polite. It's not. I don't know. It's
nobody here is a tough guy. They're all just a bunch of nice guys.
It's for the most part. I mean, even you take your garden variety douchebag in an affliction shirt. At his core, he's probably a pretty nice dude. He's just the tribal tat kind of throws him off, and the bleach blonde mohawk, but. And spray on tan, but no, it just there was like some other things that kind of clicked for me. It's like you go through a couple of seasons here, and what I mean by seasons is like it's bullshit when people talk about 4 seasons being important. But what it is nice for me is I went from a binary period. It's like it was either blazing fucking hot, and then Vegas was really cold in the winter. I don't give a shit what people say. Like when it's hovering around 30, 40 degrees for 3 or 4 months, that's pretty bad. And you never got to changing the leaves, and I know that's sort of poppycock, maybe because there's more years behind me than ahead of me that I start talking about leaves changing. But there's something nice about having season changes here. It's something nice about having, the state capitol is in Salt Lake. And so you've got the kind of the order of government, like session coming in, like what the new laws are going to be doing and how the newspapers in town would sort of drive that. College football was really big here, and as it still is with the Utes and stuff. But I'm not a big football guy. It's of all the sports I follow, it's definitely the lowest rung on there, but there's something exciting about school for the other guys starting up. And it's just like, there's this general, I don't know, esprit de corps for Salt Lake, when the fall months go, and it's kind of like rolls into a holiday season that, like you got your Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's Eve rolling into Super Bowl Sunday, the Academy Awards. And next thing you know, spring's hitting and people are up at the slopes for the 5 months, and summer kind of kicks into gear. And it's just like you find these rhythms here, which are actually really nice. And I think not unique to Utah, not unique to Salt Lake, but, just kind of a common thing I think we all kind of want to cling on to and gravitate towards.
Absolutely. And so you've been here about 13 years.
Yeah, give or take.
About 13. When did you start bartending at Keys on Main then? Or did I kind of jump ahead?
Oh, you jumped the shark a lot on that one. Keys on Main, for those that don't know about it, it's a dueling piano bar.
Oh, great bar.
It's a dueling piano bar, and the concept, of course, is that you get two fellas on stage, or a lady or a fellow, and they battle out with songs with the audience and stuff. But my first, I was working as a bartender at the Wyndham Hotel during the Winter Olympics, and that's kind of when I really developed my affection for the town. You know, the build up before the Olympics, and then during the games, and then there was a slight lull after the games, and then the Paralympics kicked in, and then it was after the Paralympics kind of, they started breaking down the city from that. That's when I really fell in love with town. But back to when the Olympics were in town, I had a chance about 4 months before the Olympics were in town, whether or not if I was going to stay in town. But unfortunately, as a lot of people know, that was September 11th in 2001. And so I was in a position to be working at a pretty good location for the games. And I was giving serious consideration to moving back to Nevada just to get out of Utah. I'd been in town for a couple of years. After September 11th, there was somewhat of a calcification of wanting to be here to see the games through. You know, I don't want to be, I'm not saying I talk shit on the September 11th, you know, like, I mean, I make fun of some of the things about it. Like airplane travel used to be a lot more fun. Like you used to be able to bring bottles of booze on a flight, you know, and you used to be able to tell a cocktail you used to call a flight attendant a cocktail waitress, you know, like the flight deck, you know, you never had to worry about having, you know, a flight attendant, you know, call in a, you know, code blue and then have the plane, you know, make a crash landing in Wichita while you're getting like hogtied because you mouth off or get loud. Like airplane travel used to be a lot of fun. With post September 11th is like I had this kind of, it's going to sound weird to say out loud because I really haven't talked about this, but I had sort of like a nationalistic vibe that came out, you know. It's like I felt like you know, I felt a connection to the community because everyone in Salt Lake and Utah was working towards these games. And I felt like even though I was just bartending at a hotel that I was kind of becoming a part of that. And I know it might be a little misdirected or a little egomaniacal to think that, but it kind of made me feel as if like this was my place for that time. And so the opportunity to leave Salt Lake was kind of truncated at that moment because I wanted to continue to see through the games, and I'm glad that I did. Following the games, I started working at another dueling piano, the first one in town called the Tabernacle. And so I worked there for about 3 years. During that time, that's when I really feel as if I came into my own as a bartender. I started out as a Friday, Saturday guy, just working as a gunslinger. I qualify now bartending in two different categories. One is gunslinging, which is what you'll find at good nightclubs. You'll get guys behind the bar that can sling drinks as fast as possible, take multiple orders at the same time, pour draft beers while they're ringing things up. You know, it's multitasking plus drink manufacturing plus customer service, you know, at the highest echelon. And then the other one I called slow play. And slow play was when you're working like, say, a hotel bar or like a neighborhood saloon or something where you go like, hey, Chris, good to see you. How's your day? You know, what's going on with the podcast? You know, hey, how's everything going at work? You know, and then, you know, it's
you get to know people's lives.
You get to know people's lives and you build regulars and, you know, like, Chris comes in, he doesn't have to wait for a Jack and Coke. He's just waiting for him as he's taking his jacket off. You know,
you're nice.
Yeah, stuff. Yeah, and so I think you need to be a well-rounded bartender. You got to be able to do both, work very fast, and then have, you know, a little bit of the gift of gab. Tabernacle was basically a proving ground to see how fast you could pour drinks. You know, because once the Winter Games, because they opened up right during the 2002 Olympics. And they had just tremendous success following that. And so the place was packed every Fridays and Saturdays. And then Thursdays were becoming, you know, really busy nights. And I started working those. And Sundays, I took over on Sundays there, and it turned into a gay karaoke night, which was the best thing that ever happened to me. You know, I in so many different ways, you know, but, you know,
you don't hear that too often.
You certainly don't. You know, like it was gayoke is what we called it. Yeah. And the reason why, and it was something that it was organically developed there, is that the bar on Sundays had a great karaoke night and that the gay community felt really comfortable going in there. And, you know, you look at me, if you see me online or pictures and stuff, I'm kind of a gruff looking guy and, you know, and stuff. But I had I kind of instituted a policy of like, as long as it doesn't go past second base, I don't care what you do. Be respectful to everybody. And if people bashed on gays in the bar, they were kicked out immediately. Gay guys were bashing on other guys, we would get you out. And
did you have to kick very many people out?
I kicked for the first 3-4 months. I probably kicked out 2 to 3 people a night.
Wow.
You know, and then after about 3 to 4 months, I didn't say like I became their cavalier their knight in shining armor, but they knew it was a safe place to go. And in return for that, it turned out to be just the greatest gig I've ever had. I learned more about gay, lesbian, transgender population in town. I never knew how large that was. I never knew how proud they were, what the causes they were fighting for. Meeting guys like Michael Aaron, who runs Q Magazine.
Well, the Salt Lake gay community is it's huge.
It's huge.
People don't realize, how big population there is here.
And you go through the percentages on this, you would think this would be reserved for towns like San Francisco or New York.
No.
Quite the opposite. It's and I think it's small, loud, and proud. And I think that's the thing that I like about the people that are the forefront of kind of like looking for an equality amongst people.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to say that my small role at Tabernacle was a part of that. What it really did for me is it kind of brought me into that world that I wasn't really familiar with, and that's, to me, in addition to making a shit ton of money, I met people that I probably never would have met. And it was kind of an opportunity for me to kind of make the big step, which was in 2007-ish, I started my own bar, which is the Woodshed. It's located on 68th 800 South. I basically socked away all that money that I made on Sundays and used it to open up that club. So
did you actually start the Woodshed?
I started the Woodshed.
So the name, the whole 9 yards?
Whole name, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the name, we have a bar back at work at Keys on Main, and me and my boss, Brandon, always joke, like, who hired the guy? Like, we don't know how he got hired, but he's on the payroll and he's been there for over a year, and we still, to this day, anytime John, you fuck up, we're always like, who hired this guy? Whoever hires him has to fire him, and we don't know. The name Woodshed, I swear to God, I don't know how we came up with.
Well, it's a good name.
It works out. My brother one of my brothers went to music school back in Berkeley and Boston, and he said musicians who practice down in small spaces, they call it woodshedding, And since it's a live music venue, the name's a little bit apropos. And the current guy who owns the place, Lee, he's done a really good job of kind of picking up where I left off with the joint. He kind of got the decorum right. And, he had deeper pocketbooks than me. Like a misconception here in Utah is that it's actually really easy to open up a bar. It's just incredibly difficult to keep it running.
What makes it difficult? Just out of curiosity? Because I'm sure the liquor laws just have to make.
They're not as bad as you think they are.
Okay, well, share.
Okay.
I mean,
I'll tell you why it's hard to keep it running, and then I'll talk about the liquor laws.
Yeah.
So what makes opening a bar very easy is that, contrary to what you say about a finite amount of licenses, that's immaterial. You can get seasonal licenses. So you can get, I think a liquor license in the state for a bar like Keys on Main is like $2,200. Don't quote me on that, but somewhere in that neighborhood. Right. They sell seasonal ones for 3 months that are $1,200. So if you just carried a seasonal every single 3 months, you'll pay $4,800 a year for a liquor license. In the big scheme of things, compared to other states, less than $5,000 a year for a liquor license is nothing. Like states even like Nevada, I believe it's $25,000 a year. California is, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like $5,000 to $6,000 a year. Like the taxes. So when people say they can't start a bar because of the liquor license, that's absolutely poppycock. There is no truth to that whatsoever. And these are also people that choose to kind of shit talk the DABC as opposed to actually get in there and open up their pocketbooks to actually get the bar going. The reason why having a bar in Salt Lake is difficult to run, above and beyond the cost of having a business, rent, utilities, payroll, insurance, unable to get competitive pricing on your products. You buy all your liquor from the state, and so they set prices so you can never get discounted rates on that. The biggest thing is, like, let's say here in Salt Lake, on average, 50% of the people are LDS? It might be a little lower, might be a little
Salt Lake active, though.
Salt Lake.
Yeah, probably even less than that active.
So, but for this purpose, let's just go 50%.
50%. We're going 50.
So we go 50% on this. Well, of those people, not all of them are 21. You got to take them out of the queue. And then you got to look at the other end of this. It's like people over the age of 55, chances are they're not going to a bar every night. And
true.
So you're kind of looking at a population of about 21 to 54. And even that gets a little cut down, a little narrow in there, because not everyone goes out on a Tuesday night. Not everyone's going to go to a club night on a Wednesday, or go to a Latin night on a Thursday, or this, that, and the other. And so just the kind of how the people in Salt Lake are is that I think people drink a lot in this state, I just don't think they drink in bars as much as we would like them to.
Well, money, it costs so much more.
Costs a shit ton of money.
It's cheaper to get a case of Pabst and drink it at home.
You come to my bar and you order 4 your Jack and Cokes, it's $20. You go to the liquor store, you get a handle of it for I think $31.
Yeah.
It's like you can't. And we also pour small in the state, so you've got like a small population of people that actually have a drinking culture who go out and get beers after work and stuff. And of those people, they already have their set spots. They go to Murphy's, Cheers to You, Johnny's, Bar X, Lumpy's. You pick a joint, they're going to have their regulars, those slow player bars that they do very good at. The cats that work Cheers to You, they're fantastic. They're fantastic because they know everybody who comes in the joint. They've got their regulars, and they know what these guys are going to both spend for drinks, food, as well as tip, And so that part, you open up a new club, you're cutting into that immediately. And so you're going to have like a vetting process of a couple of years to kind of figure out who's going to be actually going to your joint. So you look at those first couple of years where you're into so much money and you're not getting the business return that you want because, it takes time for things to develop and stuff. I could see why bars close. And, and I was a victim of just running out of money after 3 years.
Yeah.
It was as simple as that.
You just weren't getting the traffic coming in there? Or what?
I'd have 4 good nights a month that would pay all the bills for the bar. And I was, living on the good graces of my girlfriend.
Yeah.
So
you just finally just said, hey, I'm done.
Enough's enough.
Enough's enough.
My health was shot. I ended up in the emergency room with blood pressure of like 220 over 170.
Jeez.
So the docs were basically saying is that I could have stroked out immediately.
Yeah.
So when I got out of the hospital, it was just like, all right, let's sell this POS. Let's move on to the next stage. And so the cat that bought the joint from me, he did not pay full price, but he bought me out for less than like 20% of what I had put into it. But
what?
Well, it was either that or board the fucker up, And so he definitely threw me a life preserver, and to that sense, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
It got me out of hock with the state and the feds and everybody else, but even still, it was a really painful thing. And so Keys on Main came into biz because as I got out of the woodshed, I was looking for another bartending gig. And even though my cell phone's got pretty much every owner, most bartenders in the entire state, I know everybody who works the liquor side, guys who work at the DABC, liquor reps, wine reps, all the guys that drive beer trucks and stuff like that. Bar owners didn't want to hire me. I was kind of tainted property,
Really?
Yeah. And also from their perspective, I can tell
you would have thought they would have wanted to get you.
It took me a while when I sat back and thought about why I was in this position. It was because here's a guy that's been running his own joint for 3 years. You're going to bring him on as a Friday, Saturday bartender. He's probably going to be a troublemaker. Like he's going to say, oh, at the woodshed, we did XYZ. Why are you doing ABC? And I think that was initially the problem that I ran into with a lot of guys is that they didn't want to hire me for that. And so when I had opened up the woodshed, George, who's the owner of Keys on Main, he was opening up Keys on Main. We both worked at the Tabernacle at the same time. And so when he jumped ship to open up his competing dueling panel bar, I went to open up my joint. And as I was going through my Rolodex of numbers, I just kind of at the end, I remember calling George up very sheepishly, because I'm gregarious, boisterous kind of fellow. But I remember like, George, it's Benny. I don't know if you're looking for bar backs or door guys. And he goes, let me call you right back. Calls me back in 15 minutes and says, you available to work Friday? And I would go, yeah, I'll do whatever. He goes, well, I need you bartending on Friday. And I found out later, a couple of weeks later, that they were actually in the office firing a bartender when I had called, debating on how they were going to fill that spot. I called him. I could not have called it a better time.
Wow, talk about luck, right?
I mean, it was
seriously
the luckiest thing ever. And the coolest thing that happened with that gig is that George, he saved my bacon. I was, you talk about like a post-Olympic depression where I was kind of like, you had all this adrenaline pumping through you for like 6 months of working in bars and stuff like that. So in the woodshed was more of a relief, and I felt vacant. And to, add insult to injury I remember the date, it was November 2nd, 2009. Our house, which is right down the street from Fairmont, had got burglarized the day I was signing the papers with the dude that I sold the woodshed to. I'm not blaming him.
Talk about shit hitting the fan, right?
So we got cleaned out on everything, and it should have been a day of champagne and caviar, and it turned out to be a night of like, what the fuck are we going to do as security, and how come they stole what they stole? And so working at Keys turned into just a really good gig, great ownership, great management. The club is always busy. And it's, it's a microcosm for the people that come in, that live in Salt Lake, go through that bar.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you stay pretty busy. You're there Wednesday through Sunday, right?
Wednesday through Saturday.
Wednesday through Saturday, and then what do you do with your other time? I mean,
I work as a freelancer and a stringer for the Salt Lake Tribune.
Okay.
And this kind of ties in what we were talking to before we have fired up the mics here. Is that when I asked why did I stop doing my podcast, the Salt Lake City Pubcast,
which was a great podcast, by the way. If people listening have not had a chance to listen to it, I wish I could say go listen to it, but I found out it's not even on iTunes anymore.
Yeah, it's been taken down.
Gosh, I wish I would have saved it.
I did the little podcast for a while, but
it wasn't little. It was good. Come on. Anyway.
So what happened is I was doing this podcast and I've been writing a blog. The blog was a kind of a. I think that's how I got hired at the Tribune.
What's the website, real quick?
It's just BennyRaskin.com.
Okay, yeah, and I'll put the links on the show notes too. But feel free,
So
plug it out,
I started the blog about a week and a half after I sold the Woodshed. Having been a human interest columnist working for the newspaper back in college, I always thought of myself as a writer, but like a lot of things, you're a podcaster because you do it. You got to go out and do it. And I said, hey, I'm a writer. Like, when's the last time you wrote something? It's like, hey, I wrote a check to, the power company. That doesn't fucking count. So
you got to actually do it.
Well, I mean, I did do that. So I'm a bill payer, not a writer. And so I started this blog, and at first it was kind of a cathartic exercise to sort of summarize how I was feeling from the Woodshed, because I left a lot of people out in I screwed over more people than I ever thought I did. I mean, part of the reason why I had to sell is that because I don't value being genuine, it's not one of those traits that I think about a lot, but rather what it is that I was being really dishonest with myself and with friends and family. And part of the process of writing the blog initially was just to sort of categorize some of these emotions I was having. Because even when I started working at Keys on Main, I was an emotional fucking wreck. It's like I used to get butterflies going into work. Like, dude, it's like all you're gonna do is pour draft beers and make gin and tonics. Like, you can handle this. And I was still like a football player in a locker room, smacking my head into a locker, let's go, let's do this. You got this.
Yeah.
So the blog became this cathartic exercise of sort of piecing together how I was feeling after the selling the bar.
Helping put your life back together.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And I put it out there, and, it had little to no traction, my aunt was my Aunt Dee was the only person who was a regular reader and, someone who would comment on it. But I started getting into it when I started writing about what happened at the bar while working at Keys on Main. And then basically singling people out on events, and having stories like watching douchebag guys make their girls pay for drinks, having women be disrespectful to each other, watching how, guys interact with each other, how my relationship with my cooks were, how, there's all these small little nuances that happen during the course of a night that I was sort of I'm lucky because I got to meet, said person. Ellison, who used to play for the Jazz, came in a couple of years ago, and I didn't know. I knew who he was because
into Keys on Main or into the
Keys on Main.
Yeah,
he came on Keys on Main. He came in there and he had a friend of his, and he had there were two ladies with him and stuff. He comes into the bar, and I remember looking at him, and he's wearing this bright white sweater, and he's an African American, so it kind of popped on him a little bit. But as I looked over at him, I was like, "Where do you find a sweater that's that size?" And instead of him being a dick, he was could not have been cooler. He goes, "Oh yeah, you're a big man too. There's a shop on State Street. You should go down there. In fact, the guy runs the place. His name is Cameron. And tell you what, you tell him I sent you. Maybe he can hook you." And then next thing you know, it's like, "Oh my God, I'm the asshole here." Because I was trying to kind of give him some business, and then he turned out to be the nicest dude ever. You know?
Yeah.
So you have all these little parables that happen at the bar, and I was trying to capture them on the blog. And went in with a buddy of mine who's a friend now. At the time, he was just some new-faced kid that got hired at the Tribune. His name is Bill Orm. He's now the beat writer for the Utah Jazz. He came into the bar, and we hit it off. And we hit it off over show tunes. We hit it off over our love of musicals from the 50s and 60s. I love My Fair Lady. For whatever reason,
There's something I didn't know about Benny Raskin, right?
But I would, I totally, we hit it off on that. And after a couple of months of feeding them drinks and them coming in and kind of introducing him to the city and hanging out and stuff like that, his editor asked if I wanted to be a freelance writer for the Tribune. And it was writing prep sports, which is high school sports. And they were, her name was Danielle White and still is. She doesn't work there anymore. She could not have been more gracious, not with her energies, but with her patience. She gave me probably 2 to 3 months to sort of figure out what I was supposed to do there. And I got a little direction, but what I got more was just a lot of confidence and a lot of support. Like, don't worry about filing a story this week. Like when I'd go to a pitch meeting on Mondays, when we came around the room, it's like, do you have anything you want to pitch? And for the first month or so, I was like, I have nothing. It's just, she gave me a chance to sort of like acclimate to what the other people had to do. And then I kind of got thrown into the mix by writing a story on a local boxing legend whose name is Leo Montoya. Leo Montoya runs a gym up in Rose Park. He's about 87-year-old man. He's trained every fighter of note that's ever come through Utah.
Wow.
And he is just a curmudgeon, mean, short, vicious, spitfire guy that's met Muhammad Ali twice, and he'll tell you you've met him 600 times, and just one of the coolest dudes you've ever. He's legitimately one of the coolest guys you've ever met.
I could imagine. Yeah,
and I got really lucky on writing a story about Leo, and because of that, it kind of just blossomed into being able to cover more and more events, more and more games, turn into writing close up. So eventually getting my own beat to write for the Tribune.
But you go to a lot of like high school games and stuff like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I got to go. Now I'm at the point where I'm the city beat writer. So I cover East, West, Highland, Judge Memorial, Park City. I don't know how the hell I got the Park City gig. I got Roland Hall, and we got a soundtrack over there.
Yeah.
But I got to, so I started covering those guys for the 3 seasons of fall, winter, and spring months. And along the way, I met guys like, Bill became, more of a mentor. Guys like Kyle Goon, Aaron Fall, Chris Caminari, they all really kind of just gave me pointers on how to be better at doing what I do.
And how long have you been doing that now?
Almost 2 years now.
Almost 2 years. Wow.
Yeah. So it's.
Do you like that? What do you like better, bartending or writing?
I love bartending.
Yeah. What do you love most about bartending?
I'll tell you what I hate most about bartending.
Well, all right.
I hate the hours.
Yeah.
If it was a 9 to 5 job, and
I hate 9 to 5.
I used to think I did, but
what do you get finished up at 3, 4 in the morning? Or what?
I'm lucky to get home by 2:30.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not too bad.
That's not bad.
The problem is I'm a morning guy. I've got
you got to come to Fairmont Park.
I got to go to Fairmont Park. I got my girlfriend. We've been together 8 years, and we have this house down the road from Fairmont, and you miss out on a lot of Friday and Saturday events and stuff, and
but I bet it would be great for a single guy, right?
Oh my God, if I was single, I'd be crushing 40-year-old putang. But but I mean, it's good for a single guy. It's harder when you're more of a family man, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And so the things I do love about bartending, I like getting into that zone. It's there's some of these pejorative things as a bartender you can really like. It's one of the few jobs left out there you can tell someone to fuck off and still keep your job.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can make employee of the month if I tell enough people to fuck off. And
for real, though, right?
My bosses are so supportive. They know that I'm going to hold my temper to the last minute. Something about that part, the ability to kick people out. You have a strange control over folks that. Yeah. If I abused, it could be really nasty. It could feed my ego more than I already do, But I think what I like more about it is that you get to kind of facilitate people's parties, And since I started bar back in Las Vegas, I learned a lesson is that you don't drink at work. You come to work to do 2 things. You go to work to steal, you go to work to party. By partying, I mean like do drugs, drink, fuck around, hit on chicks and stuff like that. And that's fine. You can do that. And if you go to work to steal, I don't mean like not ringing up drinks and putting cash in your pocket. I'm talking about trying to take every single dollar out of people's wallets. And you can do one or the other, but you can't do both. And the reason why people get fired in this city, and I would imagine any bartending city, is that they try to do both. They're going to have a good time behind the bar and then try and rip the place off, or try to really attack customers. And but stealing from customers is usually a good thing. It means you've made their night so memorable and they've had such a good time.
And what do you mean by stealing?
Stealing, I'm taking every dollar out of your wallet.
Okay.
I'm taking every piece of cash that you brought in with you, and you're going to use your debit card. It's not a game. It's sort of like,
oh, do you want another drink type of thing? Like
upsell, push. You order a beer, you're getting a shot. Having ordered shots, let's get some beers to go out that with. Oh, you're drinking Kettle. Let's have you into Grey Goose. You're drinking Jim Beam. Let me get you in High West.
What's your most expensive shot?
It's Macallan 12.
Yeah,
it's $9.
There we go.
And our most expensive drink is a Rob Roy made, that's a Manhattan made with scotch with that Macallan, but on the other side of coins, I could sell you a couple of wet pussy shots with Long Island iced teas, and that's $14 there.
There you go.
And so for me, when I say steal, I don't mean actually being dishonest.
Yeah,
I
you're
mean,
not like digging in their purses or something.
Or ripping off my owners. What I mean is that you go there, that you're trying to walk out with as much money as possible. And that mindset of having to sell and present yourself, being clean, sober, ready to kick ass, professionalizing the job, having a focus when you get to work and wanting to be there. And, even though you could be invited to a dozen barbecues and, Madonna's playing somewhere, or whatever, or you want to go see the season premiere of Mad Men or something like that or whatnot. You have all these chances to actually do other things. You want to be there so bad that there's nothing else in the world. And if you have that kind of focus, you're going to have a lot of success.
And you probably deal a lot with tourists, though, too, right?
They're the bread and butter on Thursdays and Wednesdays.
Yeah. So, my question was, is it true that people in Utah do not know how to tip? But you probably deal a lot with tourists, so they know how to tip, probably.
It's interesting. Placed in that context, I wouldn't generalize Utahns as being poor tippers. I wouldn't say people out of state are better tippers. I think
I've heard that from so many people that are waiters.
There isn't a motto and expression where they say 10% is good enough for the church, good enough for the server. In terms of tithing and stuff. My experience usually is that the people that are good at going out know how to tip, and people who are unfamiliar with going out are very poor at tipping. So people who are very young, 21, 22. But, those are those moments where you take it, you make it a teachable moment. Like you go, hey, you know what? Bud Light's $3. It's a buck a drink, pal. Yeah. And you explain why you tip a buck a drink. And then, and then actually punishing people later for not tipping $1. And by punishing, you just ignore them.
So that's a pretty good tip to give somebody. Like if I go out to a bar and I get a buck a drink.
I think I would never ask for anything more, but I don't expect anything less.
And what about a shot? Is it pretty
buck a drink?
Just a buck a drink.
And I'm talking about Patrons, $8 in the bar. If you order 4 Patrons, tip $4.
Okay.
You order 4 Bud Lights at $12, tip $4.
Okay.
It's 4 Jack and Cokes, $20, tip $4. And the way I like to look at it is when we count out the tips tonight, it's almost dead to the number, because we get these reports on what we sell to what we make. So if I see that I have sold 300 drinks one particular night, I'm probably going to make $300 almost every single time.
So you could do pretty good as a bartender in Salt Lake
if you choose not to treat it like a real job.
Yeah, because I'm not going to lie, I've actually thought about getting into bartending. And is Salt Lake City really a city to get into it? Do people tip here? Do they know how to drink here? And it's like, it would seem like you'd have to get into a pretty busy bar to make money.
I think the point of entry to getting into bartending in Utah is difficult. It kind of ties back to me getting hired at Keys, is that I only got that gig because I knew the owner, he knew me. Yeah. And when we hire somebody or hire even cocktail waitresses and they say, we've worked XYZ, it's like, all right, well, where did you work and who do you know? Yeah. And like, who do you know is actually a question I want to know. I want to know if you know guys like Dave McFate, Rob Duncan, do you know John? It's like, if you don't know Johnny Dale, then I don't think you probably know a lot of bartenders. There's a small but proud fraternity of guys that do this. And I think we all pretty much know each other.
You're pretty friendly in the city with each other.
Yeah, there's no reason not to be.
Yeah.
It's also kind of like, I send a lot of business to Gracie's, a bar that I don't particularly like, but I got a buddy, Vike Ellis that works over there, and so like, why wouldn't I send it over to see Vike?
Now, why would you send business over there? Just
because our environment and any given night, because it's a dueling piano show, might not be what people want.
Okay.
And so instead of saying just go back to your fucking hotel room and suck it up, you piece of shit from Missouri, I can say, hey, you know what? Maybe you want to go check out the patio over at the Green Pig. It's just down 2 blocks, take a left. You can be right there. There's a guy named Scott that works here. He's a super nice guy, and invariably what happens is that I get more people coming back later in the evening when I send people away early in the evening.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of our bar, it's Chuck E. Cheese for adults. It's like, you get a birthday, anniversary, boob job, you get, divorce parties, you get promotion, graduate from
there's divorce parties.
Oh yeah, there is. But we're a bar that people come and celebrate, and the celebrations start usually around 10 to 11. And other bars, like Cheers, I'm a not pick on them because I actually really like them.
Great bar.
Great guys that work down there. But, with Cheers, it's kind of like a regular, good, reflective bar of Utah. It's a locals joint. It's a downtown joint. The bartender's there. I think the youngest cat that's been working there has been like 5 years. The cats that work there have been there forever. They have ownership, maybe not on paper, but, they take pride in working there. And so why would you not want to send somebody down there? And, conversely, when people say, I would like to think when rods get asked by a customer at Cheers, like, hey, where's a good place for live music? They're like, oh, go say hi to Benny up at Cheers. It just works out well that way.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's a definitely interesting gig. Getting hired is certainly challenging, but I just wish I could hire a prop plane that can drag a banner behind it and say, like, thank you, George, for hiring me at Keys on Main. You saved my bacon.
Yeah.
And have it fly over the Pioneer Day parade. It's just like, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to work for that guy.
Let's I want to back up a little bit, talk a little bit more about the podcast that you used to do.
Okay.
Just because I was such a big fan of it. What got you into podcasts? Or is that a long story?
No, unlike the other ones, this one's actually a relatively short one.
You were a great podcaster.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
No, you were.
I liked doing it because there's a heavy lifting to this gig.
Yeah,
and you gotta be loquacious. You gotta be gregarious.
Describe, actually, before we get into that, describe for people listening that never listened. What would you say the podcast, what was it about?
It was, I think you're doing what I was thinking.
Okay.
And that I was looking for something that sort of highlighted SLC and sort of demystified the city and the community a little more than the gets. It's a sluggish transition for people to kind of realize that Utah is not stuck in 1847.
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of a radical progressive town with, super interesting people. Ethnically, it's not the most diverse place on the planet, but, it's conservative in some areas, super liberal in others. It's just, it's filled with like really creative, interesting people.
Yeah.
And the folks that choose to make Salt Lake home are, just really something. I work with a guy at the bar. His name is Matt, and he came out here from Kentucky because he wanted to get into skiing, and the whole idea of going from a relatively flat state that doesn't have a big ski community to out here, so we get these transplants that come into town that sort of like get, acclimated to what it's like living here. I was kind of intrigued by the accessibility of podcasting. It's like, as we're looking at your rig here, minus your computer, you're probably out of pocket, maybe $300.
You got it pretty much on the nail.
It's just, you've got your gear. We could put you in, a $30,000 studio. We could probably do this with our iPhones. In fact, you can podcast.
Well, that's how I started. First couple episodes, I tried to record on an iPhone, and I was like, I gotta take it up a notch.
Yeah, you gotta put a little bit of investment. But I liked how there was this very small point of entry into it. As a guy that listens to podcasts nonstop, I listen, I'm a Carolla tard. I listen to the Adam Carolla every day. I listen to Sklar Brothers, How Did This Get Made, the BS Report, Dana Gould Hour, which everybody should listen to the Dana Gould Hour. It's the best podcast I've ever listened to, and then you've got a guy like Bill Burr, who's a stand-up comedian. Does a show called the Monday Morning Podcast, and he does use his iPhone, and all he does is just sit there and rants into it for 45 minutes. And it was just sort of like this, well, can you do that? Can you? I'm talking this to myself. It's like, is this something you can do?
And people will listen?
Well, like, do you have enough stuff to say that people would be interested in hearing? And I had some success with some episodes. Some people that I interviewed were just absolutely fantastic. And I think, didn't you interview the guys from the Blue Boutique?
I did, actually. Yeah.
Jason Vance
and Faith Martinez. Yeah.
They came over to my house.
I remember they brought over a fleshlight. Yes, I remember that. I remember that episode.
The two things about that fleshlight. One was like,
did they let you keep it?
No, they did not. I thought at first I was like, oh wow, it's like I'm getting an honorarium. They're giving me a something to remember our experience with, because when Jimmy Santiangelo came over, he was part of the wine. He's a sommelier in town. When he came over, he brought over 4 bottles of wine, some wine glasses, and the very next episode they bring over a fleshlight. I'm like,
you're like, I hit the gold mine here.
And it's like, where do I hide this in the house? And then, but I remember as I was looking at the fleshlight, I didn't know this, but they had this hard plastic thing in the center
Okay.
that you're supposed to remove. And so I'm holding this thing and like, I think it's Tara Patrick's, covering, or the front of her vagina and stuff. I'm like playing with it going like, I don't think I want to fuck this. I don't think I want. And so when they took it away, it would kind of hit me like, oh, one, I don't get to keep it. They're going to sell it to somebody else that I've handled. And two, you pull the plastic out. But, like Jason Vance, him and his wife are just ridiculously cool, they survived the plane crash, and then they run one of the few sex shops in town.
Yeah, that's what I found. Their story was so interesting. It's like, gosh, you guys survived Salt Lake City.
How do you sell dildos and pocket pussies, and still have a decent life, and from all indications have a good, strong marriage too. It's like, it's crazy, but it's like they get cats like that. So like, yeah, let's talk to these folks. Like, how do you get into selling dirty books? Because it's hard to find porno, not at Fairmont Park. You can just walk around. Sure, I guarantee we could find one stroker mag in this park. But, it's like, how do you get into that? And I started interviewing some friends. I started interviewing, some just guys from the newspaper, and we started doing some movie review shows, which were actually kind of the fun ones, because after the Aurora shooting during The Dark Knight Rises, which was the last one that I recorded, it was me and the entire bartending staff. We had all seen it, and we didn't talk about the movie. We talked about our experiences in seeing the movie after the shooting, and it's not, when I went and saw the movie, we saw it down at Murray. And the weirdest damn thing in the world was that they had a 16-year-old pimply-faced kid standing by the exit as if he was going to stop somebody coming with an M16, and it was just like, clearly the events in Colorado had impact here in Salt Lake. And I got to tell you, it's like, I didn't think, I know this isn't a movie review show. The second Batman movie was fantastic. The third one, it's fair to Midland. But watching that, I watched that kid more than I watch the TV or the screen. And, like opportunities with podcasting is you can actually talk about stuff like that.
And nobody tells you what to talk about. Nobody tells you what to do. You just do it.
And, if you're honest about what you're recording and stuff like that, you just put it up and you let people process it. They're either going to listen or not. They're going to turn it off, or they're going to continue listening. And if people find Jason Vance interesting and his products interesting, they're going to click on Blue Boutique, and they might even swing in there and buy themselves one of those, a clip piercing or something. I haven't been there in years.
And I think a lot of times it's not so much do you find that person, it's like, okay, I like this show, I like who they're bringing on, so I'm going to listen to this. Because I remember there were some episodes of yours, it's like, I never heard of this person, but I listened to it anyways, because I enjoyed listening to you, and I learned a lot, I learned a lot about Salt Lake that way.
Well, I think, kind of in the broader sense of the podcast is that terrestrial radio is something that I don't listen to anymore. Yeah. And that I have my news podcast that I listen to, and I focus a lot more on comedy and, kind of social and human interest stuff, just because I find it more interesting. But, like, I'm going to pick on K-Bear for no reason. It's not that they're bad cats or anything like that. And I like classic rock, but there comes a point when they're doing an interview, it's never long format, like they could interview, Kevin Hart, the comedian, could come in promoting his new movie, and they're going to speak to him in 90-second increments. And so right when he's warming up talking about, when he was filming XYZ, they have to cut to commercial, or they got to cut to a ZZ Top song. And I don't think they get the freedom to really kind of express themselves. A great local podcast, The Geek Show, is like, what makes that a really interesting show for me is that you've got 4 to 5 really distinct voices on the show. You got cats that have passions, like they each bring something to the table. They're all burning calories there, and they're not being told to shut up every 3 minutes so they can cut to a commercial. It's like, that's what podcasting gives you. And, I think it's, for a guy that said earlier today that I wasn't into genuine, but it's a really honest way of communicating, and here's the other nice thing. It's like with my blog, the first thing I say at the end of it, I have this little tagline at the end. It's like, I bartend at Keys on Main Wednesday through Saturday. So if you got a problem with what I wrote and you don't want it to comment on the internet, come down to the bar and say it.
Have you ever had somebody come down there?
Not a single person. And I've called people. I've actually gotten really close to almost giving like their full names and stuff, but if you got a problem, like if you did not do what I said you did, come and tell me, and what's nice about the podcasting is that, our buddy Shannon Barson, if he says something like, oh, Tom Smith is the real a-hole, well, it's out there, and it's like, all right, back it up now, not that Shannon would, but I like that aspect that it's a microphone for the internet, scratch it, it's a blowhorn for the internet. That, you can, you don't need to interview people. We could sit here and talk about anything under the sun. You could talk about your dog for an hour, and people will either listen to it or not. And I think there's a lot of freedom in being able just to kind of turn it off or fast forward it or just choose to unsubscribe.
So do you think you'll ever bring the pubcast back, or is that pretty much safe to say it's dead?
I think that incarnation is dead. I've been working with a buddy of mine named Gwen Fisher, who does Agave Web. He's my only Welsh friend. I think everyone should have one too. All the politeness of the British, but you can't understand a word they say. But Gwen is a super killer computer design guy, and he was instrumental in getting the previous website up. For me, I already have all the equipment, and I have the passion to get back into it. But I got to tell you, it's just like everything got just. It sounds like I'm making excuses, but it's like between working.
Quit making excuses.
It's like between the bar and the newspaper, and I really made the justification. It's like as little as the newspaper paid me, it was still a check every 2 weeks.
Oh yeah. Podcasting doesn't pay you anything.
I mean, how would you, in terms of monetizing it, the only way I could see this working.
Get some sponsors, get a few sponsors, donations, stuff like that,
I was talking to my boss over at Keys on Main about, hey, how about you sponsoring the Salt Lake City Pubcast? And he goes, all right, how many people can you bring in with your show? Yeah. And we started kind of doing some metrics on it, and so I would need to get 10 to 30,000 listeners. And of those 10 to 30,000 listeners, I'd have to get maybe 150 to 200 people extra through the door every single night for it to be worth his investment.
Well, see, and that's garbage though, too, because if you think about it, a podcast episode is up almost indefinite for the most part. You go back, a person could sponsor an episode. Say a business was to sponsor this episode. Boom, you pay a one-time amount, whatever. It's not like a billboard that's going to be taken down in a month. I mean, that podcast is going to be up. They're going to hear it.
Well, true. But I think the reason why I'm really interested in podcasts, like as a consumer on this, is that I found a way to listen to it. And it's not just with the earbuds. It's sort of like, hey, when I take the dogs to Fairmont Park, where we're at right now, I listen to a podcast, you know, and like when I'm mowing the lawn or like I spend all day stripping a fireplace, I'm listening to a podcast, it's like, and I have the lifestyle, which affords me the freedom to kind of check out a little bit with listening to podcasts. And I think that, when I go to the gym and I listen to a podcast, I find it distracting because I'm trying to listen and I can't really lift or run on the treadmill. And so I listen to music where I don't listen to anything. And so I think when we get to the point where people schedule times to listen to it, I think it's going to be a lot more effective in drawing people for advertising dollars.
Yeah.
And
I think podcasting is still at its baby stage. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's in its infancy.
It's
preteen.
Yeah.
It's
prepubescent.
Yeah, there you go. But so, I mean, do you want to start another podcast?
Yeah,
maybe,
I do.
Or do you care not to talk about that?
No. I think what I want to do is that I'd like kind of take a little more of a model of what you've been successful at, and then kind of go. I know I'm talking about this Bill Burr guy, but what I really like about Bill Burr is that he just talks about what's on his mind. He talks about Stanley Cup playoffs. He talks about being on the road. He talks about he's a comedian. He travels a lot, being stuck in an airport. He's got a long-term girlfriend, and like.
You're a great storyteller.
Well,
you really are. I mean, that's probably why you're an excellent bartender. Because I mean, you're an excellent storyteller. That's why I think you need to do podcasting.
Yeah. I think thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
I'm
gushing over here. I'm glad it's not a video podcast.
You're blushing, yes. But and that's not even me trying to come on to you or anything here. You know what I mean?
We're at the right park for you to come on to me.
Yeah.
No, I want to get back into it, and I think I need to lower my expectations of what I was looking for. What I need to do is get back into the habit of having the discipline of sitting down and recording it. And
it's tough.
It's super tough.
Editing it, cleaning it up,
it just, and then, there's also a part, I don't know about you. Do you ever get tired of listening to your own voice?
At first I did.
Yeah.
At first I did.
Now
it's exciting.
Well, you gotta stop interviewing chatterboxes.
Yeah.
Hey, there's Chris after 75 minutes of Ben talking.
No, well, that's what we're here to listen to you, though. I mean, I guess, I do, but no, it does get annoying after a while to listen to your own voice, but you have to get used to it.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for me with the podcast was listening to my voice through the cans or the headphones while I was recording.
Yeah.
Because I was like what you are with the computer in front of you, kind of dialing things in as we're doing interviews. And there's this point where it's just like, Jesus Christ, is that how I sound? And all nasally and whiny and, kind of drawling on and on and on. And, I found when I had the headphones on, I got caught up in my own head too much. And then I started thinking, it was a distraction. It would be a distraction. Like at first when that guy came walking over with his iPod turned on, it's just like, what the fuck does this guy want? And then I'm thinking, is this the one guy we're going to be interviewing today?
Yeah, we need to get somebody here from Fairmont Park to interview him. I mean, I swear it seems like there should be somebody we could talk to.
But no, I want to get back into it. You know, it's like, I mean, I'll ask you a question. Like, how far do you want to take the podcast? I mean, is this...
you know, honestly, I didn't think I'd go this far, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm hitting 1 year is coming up. My 1 year anniversary is coming up, close to my 100th episode, believe it or not. You know, the sky is the limit. I'm going to allow myself... Honestly, I'd like to do another podcast as well that isn't so much Salt Lake based, but can maybe be more recognized on a national level.
It's more of a pop cultural. Maybe
something a little more along those lines.
Yeah.
I don't get. I love doing this, but I think you can get to a larger audience if you're not as based on such a.
Well, your demographic is pretty small.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, for me, writing my blog was basically a tryout for the newspaper. I mean, you ever thought about getting into radio? Or is that something you?
See, the problem is with radio is I personally think mainstream radio is dead.
I agree.
And so I think podcasting is the way to go. Again, goes back to monetizing from a podcast, which I listen to a few podcasts of people that say they make, you know, that's their full-time job, but then you find out they do 7, 8, 9, 10 podcasts.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you're going to be doing a shitload of podcasts. And so, you know, right now I look at it as a great way to meet people in Salt Lake. You know what I mean? New people, new friends, get to know their stories. What else am I doing with my time? It keeps me from hanging out at the bar. You know what I mean?
It's, you know, and I agree with you in the sense, like, what else? It's a great hobby, you know, and leaving it at that. And then
you got to have a passion for it. Otherwise, you're not going to stick with it.
Yeah.
You know,
coming up on 100 episodes, you were saying you're doing 2 a week. I mean, as a guy who did only 25 episodes, I know that it's taxing like no one's business. Yeah. And there's a level of stress to it.
Well, in some weeks I do more interviews.
Yeah.
You know, have some extra, you know, kind of depends on when the person can meet up, you know, the schedule, my schedule, their schedule. You know, there's a lot of factors in there because I do a full-time job during the day, you know, and so that, you know, plus then during, I take night classes. Yeah. Obviously, the summertime I'm not, but I take some night classes.
Well, you know, and it's also, while doing it, the question I was going to ask you was, with you, getting involved with all this stuff, it's like you have a stylistic element that I really like about your podcast. I like the design of your website. I like the intro. I like the bump music. You know, you've got this great kind of baritone voice, you know, and you do something a lot better than I do. You listen, you know, I always found like I had to drive more conversations because you'd get, a great bar companion. You put them in front of a microphone. A lot of times these people, I mean that pejoratively, is that they don't know where to put their mouth on the microphone. They're touching.
Well, that's the toughest thing about bringing people on the show. You know, they don't know how to talk into the mic. You know,
and then there's a part where I think sometimes they get self-conscious about like, oh, should I be talking about that hobo that I strangled when I was 17, or like what's on limits, what's off limits, and you were saying before we fired the mics up is that I was going through all your episodes on iTunes, and it seemed about 15 episodes ago every single one had the explicit tag on it. Which is, that's your prerogative to put on there. You don't have to, but when we've dropped as many F-bombs as we have, it's kind of an explicit show. It's for mature audiences.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's opened up the show for you?
Has it opened up the show?
Yeah. Or does you feel?
I feel this is the way I look at it. I'm a big fan of freedom of speech. Okay. So I think that's the biggest problem with radio, in my opinion, is that they can't say, what they want to say. And so the way I look at podcasts is, you don't have the FCC telling you what to do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to allow somebody to come on here and, hey, boom, say what you want to say. I'm not trying to. Now, if I'm talking to a business, I realize they're probably not going to, F this, F that, But that was kind of a thing. It's like, I want people to come on here and show a side of Salt Lake. We're just like every other fucking city out there. You know what I mean? Like we're not just a bunch of uppity people, And so I actually found more, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know how to really answer that question,
I always found that.
Did you think the explicit tag ruined your show?
Far from it.
Okay.
I think.
I mean, I wanted to come and hear Benny Raskin say fuck.
Yeah. I think what it is that you put me in front of a judge, my grandparents, you put me in front of a police officer, you put me in front of a bank teller. I'm not dropping F-bombs. I'm not going,
of course.
And so clearly I have the self-discipline to monitor my language depending on the circumstance.
Yeah.
But when you're getting here and you're kind of cutting loose and you're talking about old times and stuff like that, a fuck's going to get dropped in there, or shit. And I'm in agreement with you.
And I tell people, I go, if you want to be careful, go to the iTunes page, and if it's got the explicit tag, don't listen to the show. But define the ones like my Richie T. Stedman.
Yeah. Well, it's, but it's also in a lot of things like go into some movies and stuff like that. If a movie has excessive drug use or there's rape in it, I'm not going to watch it. And it's not my cup of tea, and I'm not going to enjoy the product. And so it's not for me. It doesn't mean that I'm going to talk shit on the product, like I'm not going to say like, oh, whatever you do not go see Transformers 3 because there's a explicit rape scene there after they shoot PCP in their eyes, but I'm not, if I'm watching something on TV, I can turn the channel. If I'm not liking someone I'm reading, I flip off the web page. Yeah. And I think people should have the same freedom with the podcast. And that's the thing that I do like about podcasting is that it really is your microphone, your blowhorn to say what you want to say with very little fear of repercussions, short of maybe singling people out.
Well, look at WTF. Has that podcast been ruined because of language?
It's in the fucking title.
You know what I mean? So it's and he's actually brought that up, like people saying, oh, you should swear less or this. And he's like, it's my fucking show.
Yeah.
Listen to it if you don't. I mean, there's a million other podcasts out there. True, I'm trying to get Salt Lake City's attention.
Yeah.
And does everybody here swear? Well,
I would say yes.
I think people that are going to listen to my show do.
Paula Dean, a couple of weeks ago, got burned for using the N-word, in some weird context and got brought up. And the way I always thought about it is like, you got a Southern cooking show with a woman in her mid-60s. There's chances are she's probably used the N-word. Probably never said the N-word, actually just used the real word,
Yeah, I think most of us have.
And we've all said things along those lines. But, it's like when I write the blog, I choose not to swear on the blog because I don't like the way it looks on the page.
Yeah, it's trashy.
It's trashy.
Yeah.
And if it's not in a quote, like I'm quoting somebody or I'm saying something, like I do more internal monologuing in the blog. And so for me, I don't see why would I say like, oh, that fucking dog's got a pink tail. It's like, or that dog has a pink tail.
Unless you're writing erotic literature or something like that,
Dear Penthouse Forum, I was a freshman at a small Midwestern college. I never thought it would happen to me until one day it did. No, but I don't see the use in that. But with the podcast, which is always nice, and I think this is what's really liberating about what you do, is that you can say what you want to say.
Yeah.
And I go back to this. It's like, if your goal is to get a broader audience, chances are you're going to ratchet back on the profanity. And if your role is to have more self-expression, you're going to say what you want to say.
Yeah.
And if for some reason this conversation started getting deep into the difference between tongue and groove and, if we started talking about baseboards and foundations for home construction, chances are I might tune out.
Yeah.
And we're talking about something innocuous like home buildings. Like you have these expectations you want with your guests.
You didn't want to talk about that stuff today or what?
I don't, no. We're in the middle of redoing our house right now. And so I'm covered in drywall dust.
Yeah.
I haven't showered in days.
I thought it was drugs.
I was sanding on some walls today and I went to, cause it's hotter than hell in the house. I wipe it like this. I either look like an albino Hitler or I look like I've been doing gaggers of blow.
Well, that's what I thought. I
the albino Hitler?
No, the blow part. No wonder he suggested Fairmont Park. No, actually, I was a Twitter follower recommended recording here.
Oh yeah, it was Trevor Hale.
Trevor Hale.
So shout out to Trevor.
Shout out to Trevor because this actually worked out great. Hopefully we captured Salt Lake City a little bit. I was hoping to get a hobo over here or something
chance. Well, maybe we'll get stabbed on the way to the cars.
Yeah, well, that would make a great story. Anything else you want to add, Benny? Before I appreciate you sitting down, and I think we kind of. How often do you update your blog? I mean, is there a
twice a week,
or is it just kind of
expects one on a Tuesday, expects one on a Friday?
Actually, what I have to ask this to everybody.
Yeah,
I ask this: favorite places to eat in Salt Lake? Do you have any favorite local places that you want to talk?
I am going to be so bland. Not that the food is bland, but I'm going to be so middle of the road.
I know you Pie Hole, right?
I'm a fan of Pie Hole for the people, not the pizza.
Okay. Anyways,
I'm going to go. Red Iguana is number one with a bullet.
Boom. There we go.
There's just, man, Mexican. I would have thought here in the West we'd have better Mexican restaurants. We have a nice Latino population. Like Mexicans got to pull their heads out of their asses and start making better Mexican joints. Because Red Iguana can't carry the entire load.
I love it.
They're so goddamn good. And yet the next best Mexican joint is Beto's on 500 South and 300 West.
What about Alberto's? So they got a good breakfast burrito. Come on.
You can't fuck up eggs and salsa. That's, Red Iguana's got it going. Another super blasé answer is Lucky 13. They got good burgers. And you know what? You can't find a better, surlier bartending staff. If you ever want to find out what good bartenders look like, go look at those dudes.
Have you ever had an alligator burger from there yet?
Not yet.
I haven't either. I want to try it.
We had the peanut butter. Last time I was there, I had the peanut butter burger. I swore it off because of that movie, Twilight Zone, the movie. Probably
a peanut butter burger?
Fucking off the chart. It was so legit. I mean, I crave it when I have a burger.
Just peanut butter on a burger.
It was bun, burger, onions, cheese, peanut butter. Sorry to hit the microphone. I'm very animated when I talk about it. It was unbelievable.
Well, you're excited.
Yeah, but the staff down there is kick ass, and they run such a great joint. The beer is ice cold. Like, they don't fuck up on the cold beer,
Speaking of beer, I know you're a Fat Tire fan.
I'm a bit of a Fat Tire man.
I heard they're coming to Utah.
They're coming to Utah.
Is that true?
It should be here July 23rd.
Okay. How is that? Do you have to refrigerate it? Don't you have to refrigerate Fat Tire?
I think there's a lot of things that need to be refrigerated if the DABC is going to fuck up.
Yeah. But how
are they going to transport it over here and put it into a steaming hot warehouse in West Valley City?
Yeah,
very easily. They're going to put it in a steaming hot West Valley.
Is it going to make Fat Tire taste like garbage?
Hopefully, people are going to burn through it.
Okay,
that's the only way I can see him. So that's I don't have a lot. I know we're wrapping this up, but I just want to say really quick things here.
I'm not. Yeah,
we talk about liquor laws in the state. I only have a couple of beefs with it. One,
let's talk liquor laws.
I really specifically only have two beefs with the liquor laws in Utah. You only get an ounce and a half. Fine, fuck it. That's all you get in booze. You don't need any more.
But you can still get drunk.
You can still get drunk. You just have to pay more. Wine pours, 5 ounces, more than enough. Can't complain about that. What gets me is that I hate the fact that I go to the liquor store and I have to buy warm canned beer or warm bottled beer.
Isn't that ridiculous?
It's not like if I get caught drinking a warm can of beer leaving the liquor store, I still get the same DUI. Yeah. And so what does it matter? And they talk about the refrigeration costs, this and that, but they're going to fuck up the products like they're going to fuck up Fat Tire. I swear to God on this one. And the second one is I want full strength beer on tap.
Yeah.
Enough's enough.
I thought bars did have full strength.
No, they do not have. You will not find a single bar in the state of Utah that has stronger beer than 3.2% by alcohol or 4.0 by weight.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's like I hate Newcastle out of a bottle, but Newcastle off the tap is like heaven. I can see why those Brits drink as much as they do. I just don't understand. If they could change those two laws, bring back the private club memberships. Lower the alcohol down to one.
Why do you think they need to bring back the private club memberships?
No, I'm just saying I will take any punishment.
I was going to say that was horrible, man.
I will take any punishment they would want us to bring full strength beer on tap. I would concede every other rules on this. Do
you think Utah will ever see that?
Probably within 5 years.
You think so?
I think the tourism drives the state so much that they know that skiing in Colorado is just as good, if not better sometimes in Utah, and it's hard to keep tourism biz. We're on the verge of losing outdoor retailers without having cats, kind of change up how we do our hospitality here.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to change sometime in the very near future.
Really?
Yeah.
I hope so.
I do too.
So, yeah. Anyways, I think that's going to do it.
You're a hell of an interview, dude.
How can people find you?
Benny Raskin on Twitter, bennyraskin.com on the interweb. Come say hi to me down at Keys on Main.
And have a drink.
Have a drink.
Thanks a lot, Benny, for coming on the show.
Nice meeting you.
Many thanks goes out to Benny Raskin for coming on the show and sharing his story, sitting down with me at Fairmont Park and talking with me. I had a lot of fun with that conversation. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to it. Again, his blog can be found at bennyraskin.com. Go ahead and read that. And it's a really, really great blog, really, really great writer. And follow him on Twitter at Benny Raskin and follow him as he gives us Fairmont Park updates throughout the week. And head on down to Keys on Main. He's there Wednesday through Saturday. Have him pour you a drink. Tell him you heard him on the I Am Salt Lake podcast. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. I want to give a quick thank you to Megan B. and Tony R. for their recent donations towards the podcast. Helps keep the show alive, helps keep the hosting, the bandwidth, the travel expenses, just really, really helps out with the show. So thank you so much, Megan B. and Tony R. for your recent donations. If you would like to leave a donation, that donate button is at I Am Salt Lake. They will not go unnoticed. $1 or $2 goes a long ways in helping keep the production of this show alive. Also, I want to tell you about the Zag banner on the website. If you plan on doing any shopping through Zag, if you're in the market for a invisible shield or a Zag Spark, click on that banner, do your shopping through there, and they will throw a few nickels our way and helps keep the show alive that way as well. So many thanks goes out to Zag for their support of the podcast as well. Also, share any of your favorite episodes on your favorite social media site with your family and friends. Tell them about it. Leave us a review on iTunes. That helps out the show immensely, boosts our ratings, gets us in front of more people. That way, more people find out about the show. You can also you can find us on Stitcher Radio at just search for I Am Salt Lake. You can find us there. We're also on the Mediocre Radio Network, mediocreradionetwork.com. Drop me an email at iamsaltlake@gmail.com. Tell me what you think of the show. If you have anybody that you would like me to do an interview with, or if you would like me to do an interview at, I'd like to do some more remote podcasting, as doing this interview in this episode at Fairmont Park was a lot of fun. So drop me an email, iamsaltlake@gmail.com. Tell me what you think. Love to hear from you guys. And until then, I'll be back on Thursday showcasing another individual or somebody else in the Salt Lake City area. You guys have a good day. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.